All right, Marie DeLockery is coming next, and she asked me to tell a story, and this is the story. So the evidence that a lot of this is already happening at our church. One piece of that evidence was the other night's church council meeting. I've never been in such a joyful, playful, even silly meeting that got so much done. Marie DeLockery was announcing all of our new leaders, and she said, "Please don't applaud, don't applaud individually. Wait till we're done." And there was so much joy that she got interrupted like 17 times by applause, by cheers, by laughter. And she said, "Fine, applaud." And it was evidence that we are building community, that we do have joy, that we are building a culture of trust. And so at this point, we asked Marie to come and talk about how do we do that.
Okay, all of you should have received a folder. Some of you have a folder with your committee name on it. Can you hear me in the back? Because I'm not at the mic yet. Some of you have a folder with your committee name because you're the chair, or you're here because the chair is not. Inside that folder is the list of committee members. We'll get to that in just a second. The rest of you should have received a folder that kind of is nondescript. It doesn't look like it has anything in it or anything on it, but everybody in this room should have a folder. And if you don't have one, I put them here on the corner of the chair, and you will not bother me if you come up and get one, okay? All right, so in the middle of all that joy and applause and jocularity and everything, I'm trying to stay organized. I'm trying to move forward. I'm trying to keep Ron from being the leader of a meeting that goes 2.5 hours, all right? And I was like second, right after devotion, and I knew the agenda coming up. So I'm going, let's focus. What Eddie didn't say was, I did kind of lower my head and say, I have lost this group. You're going to have moments where you lose the group. How are you going to focus and bring them back together? All right, so let's run an efficient meeting. In your folder, everybody should have one. If you don't, now's your time to get it. I want you to kind of look at two different things. And you can do it side by side. I know you've got a lap. The first one is exhibit A, B, and C. A, B, and C. And then the other one is stapled together, and it's what I sent out to the nomination and leadership development committee members before our first meeting. Let's go over the example, the exhibit A first. A typical way, everybody, I'm looking around, most of you have been in leadership for a very long time, or, Owen, you're growing up in it, but you've had the experience of watching your parents, okay, and watching people do this. Some of the other folks that are not here today are young. Now, I didn't bring my phone up here, so Cindy Brewer, if you got your phone on you, give me a 5-minute warning when it's close, because I am not running over. Have an effective way to end a meeting, okay? Give somebody the job, all right? So we have a diverse group that has developed, and we're all at different stages, so some of this might be redundant to some of you, but even though I led faculties, I led meetings for decades, I listened to Pastor Eddie's videos, and it's like, oh my word. So I did what Eddie does, who sits in his car or goes to the room And I'm redoing things based on what I've just learned. Folks, you're gonna do that. You're gonna have a plan. It's already gonna be written down, but you're gonna find something that tweaks, that is important, that resonates, and you need to make sure that you share what you've learned with the other people. That's what this is about, to run a meeting. It's not just, I'm the sage on the stage and I'm gonna tell you everything I know, so here we go. All right, it's more than that. So how I typically would run a meeting would be to greet people and a prayer. So folks, let's bow our heads because I need this. All right, let's bow our heads. Gracious God, come into our room today, come into our lives. Stay with us as we learn, as we grow, as we lean into each other, and as we prepare to go back to FMCC, go back to the world, go back to our community, and share what we know so that we can help folks find you. I sent in your son's name. Amen. So to critique, a prayer doesn't have to be forever. It's not the sermon. It is the focus. It is our spiritual balance. It is our center. So while we're looking at Exhibit A, if you would just kind of take the stapled sheet, open it up, and kind of see what we did at our first nominations meeting. Okay? We organized our scope of work. We reviewed what we needed to do. We talked about global ministries. Ron sat there, Eddie sat there, a couple others, Mike, with the bylaws so that we knew what task was before us. We identified what did global want. Why would we just sit there and fill a name into an opening if we didn't know what the purpose was? Okay? So then we moved on. We reviewed the information that we did have. Ron had already asked people to identify if they were going to stay or if they wanted to roll off at the end of 2024. That did give us an idea of our purpose, our task, and our focus. Then we needed to know who's going to do what and when, how, where, by what date, what. So we identified that. The biggest reason I'm sharing this with you is at the end, before we prayed out, Eddie goes, I had no idea we had so much work to do. Okay, I wasn't trying to make up work to do. It is, if we want to do this right, know what your job is. If you want to run an effective meeting, know what it is that you need to accomplish. Break it into tasks. Figure out when those tasks are going to be, when you're going to address them, and when you're going to say, okay, we've reached it. Evaluate. How do I know when I've reached that point? So what I did that day, on July 15th, kind of looks like Exhibit A. I didn't type the word prayer on there, but I opened up, Eddie closed us out. Just like I found a timekeeper right now, I would highly recommend you find someone to take minutes. There is no way that you can be effective, that you can be timely, if you don't have someone writing it down. Thank you, Tommy Joseph. And then he sent it out to folks so that we could go, yep, this is right, no, this is not right, and we get it worked out before we say, yep, we're going to accept this. So delegate. The person standing up here, this sage, is not really that. It's just the one to get the ball rolling. I heard recently, and I don't know who said it, but about the poles with the plates that spin, and was that at the church council meeting, and running here and there and trying to keep everything going. Most of us grew up with Captain Kangaroo, and we saw that. All right, so my Exhibit A looks a little bit like I did. Now, after listening to and watching the videos at home, I'm going, you know what? I can do better. So I'm already doing a little evaluation. I can do a little bit more. Mike Brewer stood up, Jim Stackhouse stood up at that church council meeting, and their testimony of what they said is more powerful and resonates with me now than what it was they actually needed to say about their committee. That stood with me longer. Mike explaining what they were gonna go and do. Jim explaining what he and Pam had decided and what they were gonna go and do. That was powerful, and those are moments we need to make sure as chair people, we don't overlook those moments. Now you can call them what you want. I'm here, I use some wording that we've seen before, God sightings, or how did he help you accomplish your goal, or what is it that spiritually, what words are we learning today that we could take with us and think in our brains, I need to be a spiritual leader, and how can I do that? That's your option C. I'm just making sure it really was letter C. That, what are we going to take away? How do we incorporate into a meeting that's supposed to get this done, this done, this done? Well, serve cookies if you want, but how can we do this in a timely fashion, accomplish the goal, but more importantly, keep the focus on Christ? Now, Exhibit C. That's the person who hasn't prepared, who comes flying in, who has a million excuses about, I don't have an agenda today, so I'm just working off the top of my head. I was up with baby all night, and telling you their life story about why they're butterflying around the room, doing this, that, and the other thing, and they're not focusing. They're wasting your time. Now, I think professionally, all of us have probably sat in a few of those meetings or they read us every word. This is my pet peeve. Please do not, and you notice you've got handouts. You do not have one of these. I cannot stand someone reading every word to me off a PowerPoint. I need a PowerPoint to keep me focused, or I need an agenda to keep me focused so that I don't forget to do something. Okay, so have the tool that you need as you're leading your committee. Have what you need to stay moving forward. I use the word forward progress, drives my kids nuts, because they're going, you are going forward, you are making progress, you are being redundant. Okay, but it makes sense to me. But don't read to me. I can do that. And I can do it faster than you can read to me. So maybe I'm like the lady who wanted to get the meeting done and who wanted to leave. I don't know. But at the same time, I want to honor people's time.
That's right.
And when I was at admin board at some other place, if you were on the admin board, I always started the meeting saying, it's 6:30, we're gonna start now, and we're gonna honor the time of everyone who's here now. Everyone else is welcome to join in, but let's begin. And that's how I started those meetings. We did open in prayer, we closed in prayer. So that's kind of ingrained in me on how to run a meeting. Now, what I learned along the way serving on committees was Preston Carpenter, when he ran a finance committee meeting. I don't know how he does it now, James, but there was always somebody doing a devotion. Do you still do that?
Reverend Stackhouse.
Oh, you don't make it, you don't rotate it?
No, we get the word from
Well,
the
all
man.
right then. The mantle is there.
And we have an associate pastor too, Mike Haggard.
All right. So people on finance understand that's going to happen. The expectation is there and you're ready to go. How am I doing on time, Cindy?
You're great.
Okay. So I learned from Preston That's an important part of the meeting. When I was on a leadership council before at some other place, we frequently talked about where we saw God during the week. We didn't always know that we saw God until someone else started sharing. And it was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So out of that came spiritual time. Folks, 5 minutes. We can give 5 minutes of our committee meeting to talking about God. We can do that. Effective meeting. Focus on God. But that Exhibit C person who comes in making a million excuses, who hasn't really thought about what they're going to say, what they're going to do, it's different if you change. Change means you're usually improving what you had already planned, but you planned something in the first place. But rewriting your script, that's just improvement. I see the light. Something's better. Throwing stuff at people, just throwing, we've got so much to do. Do you hear that? Have you been in meetings where you hear that exasperation? It doesn't have to be a church meeting. It could be a community meeting. It could be a sorority, a fraternity. It could be a something where you've gathered, someone's speaking, and there are a million excuses. I would recommend that you stand up here with authority because you've been asked to be here. Someone has recognized your strengths. Someone recognizes you can do this. You know how. So, plan accordingly. That's the biggest thing I can say about having an effective meeting, is think about it beforehand. It doesn't all have to be written down. Drove my faculty nuts when I would not sit here and read off an agenda. I've been planning that meeting since the last meeting.
Yeah.
I've been planning, I'll bet you do that with sermons, don't you?
Yeah.
You do that with music, don't you? When one's done, you move on, and sometimes you're already moving on 2 months ahead of time because you know where you want to go. And I know that because Eddie led a group at my house one day. They needed a place off campus and they were upstairs in my rec room. And they planned out the sermon series they wanted to do. And then I fed them lunch. Can you bring some hospitality into your meeting? Now I learned that nicely. I was hoping Mark Hansen was here today so he could take it home to Sarah, but I learned this from Sarah Hansen. Is that it's okay to have a little hospitality from time to time. It doesn't mean necessarily at that meeting, but Eddie spoke on it in his talk. Frequently, 3 or 4 times a year, card ministry would go to lunch. Sometimes lunch was at her house, sometimes it was at some local restaurant, supporting the community. Find time to focus on Jesus, find time to focus on each other, find time to relax and enjoy, and this is why we're together. The other thing I was hoping Mark would hear is, it was from Sarah when she told us about her recurring cancer. It was in card ministry, as she called us, her people. It was this group that had been writing cards, that were reaching out to others at a meeting, doing what we do, but we focused on Sarah for a little bit. And she's going, you are my people. You are the ones I come to for strength. Now, I don't think I'm sharing anything that she hasn't said because she stood up and said it at the Isaiah meeting when we were at class. And there are so many things that we can incorporate into item number 1, 2, 3, 4, pray, go. You are the leader. You decide the direction. Write that agenda, send it out ahead of time. And that's what's stapled to, you know, how I had you fold the page. Ahead of time, I mailed out, 5 days ahead of time, so that they had an idea of what we were gonna do. It was the very first time. I thanked them for saying yes. Please say thank you. Nobody here had to say yes. Everybody here did.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that when the nominations committee people called you, that you did say yes. And you heard me say it at church council, we only had one no, and that was in my mind in the first place, is that person's agenda is packed. Do we know what we're asking of this person? Okay, so, and then I just kind of outlined things that we were thinking of, just to get the wheels moving. Let people know what's coming. This sounds like Max had done it. Tell them what you're gonna tell them, and tell them what you told them. Is that, did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it took 5 minutes to organize a quick little email. It took maybe 10 minutes for me to write a group and contact list initially. Once you've got it, you've got it. And you can just hit send. You pull up that contact group, off they go. Leaders, those of you that are chair, in your folder, you have a list of people that said that they would be members of your committee. Call them, please call them. And the other reason I'm saying that is, we know that there was a big seismic shift back in the fall with some membership, and folks left. Well, some of those folks still are on the books as being members. I've not seen them in church. Call them. See if they want to be included. Are they still here? You don't have to be the one to discern whether or not, are you still a member of this church? But the other folks need to know that they're cared for. I sent an email yesterday, I guess it was, following up on a call that Mike Brewer made to someone that we needed to. Shirley Roach, before she passed, said, I will roll off at the end of 24. So we knew we needed to fill that. We just weren't gonna fill it while she was in the hospital. That didn't seem right at all.
Sure.
So now the position has been filled. It's not been announced to anybody except to our nominations group, but it's Whitney Douglas Oppenheim.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more younger layer, someone who's come from Germantown United. Yes, 5 minutes? Thank you. I'm just about done. So Mike called Whitney, explained the job. She said, have you just talked to my mother? And as the story goes, from, if I get it right, Mike, feel free to correct me, but he said, no, I talked to your mother. And well, I just told her last night that I really wanted to be on a committee. And I guess, did you say that I had not talked to her either?
Yeah, I said, no one's talked to you.
Nobody had talked to Sherry. But I sat in the congregation, I kind of did a Cindy Brewer thing, where I'm looking around. Joyce does the same thing, I'm looking around. Do I know that person, is that person new, all right. Those are the ones we want to bring into our committees. Those are the ones we want to get involved. It's not just that we want a body in the committee, we want them to come to Christ. We want them to be with Christ. We want them to grow in Christ. So don't be somebody who's Exhibit C. Think ahead of time. Decide how much of your time you're going to utilize from your meeting to spiritual growth. Celebrate the good times. Hug each other during the sad times. That is as much a part of being an effective leader at a meeting as anything else you can possibly do. Okay? Have any questions? Like I said, most of you have led plenty of meetings, but let's focus on God. Let's focus on Christ. Let's focus on where are we going from here. And I thank you.
Thank you, Marie. All right, fantastic, Marie. Thank you very much. We're going to take a little break as we wait for our next guest to come and lead us. So you've got about 10, 12 minutes.